Hey guys, welcome to the YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Eden. I'm a music producer and content creator, and I make pop music. Today's episode of Behind the Songs is sponsored by Ableton. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I use Ableton to produce all of my songs. And so today in the studio, we're going to be producing an alternative indie psychedelic groove with hints of reggae and soul. Let's get started. But to start off strong, we've got this incredible updated UI with different options for the visuals. You can have default, which everyone is used to seeing, but I like this classic medium dark because it's easy on the eyes. I'm going to quickly set my tempo with 82. And another really cool feature that Ableton Live updated is that you can set the key. So my song is in G minor. Now that that's it, I'm going to load up some drums. I'm going to search here for addictive drums. Another really cool update is the overhaul of the browser. When I started searching for addictive drums, it's suggesting to me a bunch of things that show up in my search. And you can actually see that here it's listed them, whether they are devices, images, midis, presets, samples, etc. I really like how efficient it is to search for things now. So here's my addictive drums. I'm just going to drop that over here on my first MIDI track. And now it's time to get a groove going. I'm going to set my record quantization to 8th note and triplets quantization. This just basically means that when I'm playing the MIDI notes, everything is in time automatic. Now let's get a groove going. I'm going to pop on my headphones. Layer that over with some hi-hats. I'm going to turn on the overdub button and hit record. Now that I have a groove that I like going, I'm going to add some guitar. When I'm working with audio, I like to see the levels as I'm inputting the devices. And another really cool update that Ableton implemented is being able to see your MIDI devices and your mixer in arrangement view. So I'm just going to make sure that my guitar is inputting at -8 dB. Now I do want these instruments to sound live, but I'm not liking how raw they sound. I feel like it could do with a bit more, especially the drums. So for now, I'm just going to move on back to the drums, and we're going to add another MIDI track, and I'm going to call this MIDI track drum samples. Another really cool thing that Ableton Live Suite 12 has implemented is the fact that they have integrated with Splice. So all I have to do is go over here to Places, click on Splice, and my Splice loads up. I can see the credits that I have and use it just like before, except that now it's no longer a standalone device. It's integrated into my DAW. This has worked miracles for my efficiency and one of my favorite new updates to Ableton. So now I'm going to just search for a kick. I'm just going to drag the sample straight into my drum rack, and voila, it's there. Say for example, I like that drum sample, but I want to find something similar. I can drag this drum sample here, right click it and say show similar files, and inside of Ableton's browser there's all these different files that are similar to the one that I just clicked on, and it has these bars on the right hand side to show you how similar they are. So when you go through the samples, it searches through your entire library to find similar sounding samples without you having to go through that hard work yourself. I can actually drag it right over here into my drum track. Now let's layer these drums with that kick. So I want my drums to start off with like a drum roll before getting started. And so I'm just going to search for a drum roll in Splice. I really like this roll, but I want that sound to play inside of my Addictive Drums plugin. What I'm going to do is just drag the audio here, and then I'm going to right click it and say convert drums to new MIDI track. This is a really cool feature where you can convert audio to MIDI within Ableton. So I click and it's done. Here it is. So now I can drag this MIDI into my Addictive Drums, and this is what it'll sound like. So now you might be looking at my door and wondering what's going on, but right now I'm actually looking at the MIDI notes of my drums. There's my arrangement view. And here we have the notes, envelopes, and MPE. Before you had to look somewhere else for these different views, but now they're listed right above your MIDI note editor. You might be wondering what's this beautiful purple color on the side. That's actually highlighting the key that I'm in, which is G minor. And if I click on highlight scale, Ableton now shows me where to play so that I can play the right notes. But obviously within a drum setting, you don't really need this. So let's test it out with an instrument. Next up is my next favorite feature, which is Splice Instrument. Basically, Splice bought the rights to Spitfire Labs, which is one of my favorite plugins, and it's been integrated into Splice as Splice Instrument, which you can play within the Ableton DAW. So now I'm going to search for some Rhodes. Let's try out this one called Vintage Keys. Ooh, I'm loving this one. So I hit download, and now I can play it directly into my DAW. Smooth. Let's track that in, shall we? Now I'm not liking how dry my guitar is, so I'm gonna go ahead and add some guitar effects. And we just want a clean sound for this guitar. So I like how clean this guitar sounds, but let's add some tremolo to give it that reggae vintage vibe. For that, I'm gonna be using this really cool new feature by Ableton called Autopan Tremolo. Now for this song, I kind of want everything to sound like it's live, as if you're in the room with all the instruments and listening to it at a cafe. And how I'm going to do that is by group bouncing all these tracks, adding some reverb and putting it way at the back of the mix. I'm going to select the group and say bounce group in place. This will bounce my entire arrangement into a new track, allowing me to get a bounce of all of the instruments in one track. There's my bounce. Turn the volume way down and put up the reverb. Another really cool thing about Ableton Live is that you can extract MIDI notes and separate stems within the DAW itself. So say for example, I wanted to extract all the stems from this group bounce, I would just click here, separate stems to new audio track, and it allows you to choose vocals, drums, MIDI, bass, and others. I can even convert the melody to a new track or find the harmony. Speaking of harmony, it's time to add some vocals.
Cooking up a storm. Mom's crying in the bathroom. She wanna run away from home.
Now that I've recorded my vocals, it's starting to look like a full song. Say for example, I want to filter on the second verse where the vocals are forefront and everything else is filtered out. I'm going to go over to this group that I made earlier and I'm going to input an auto filter on the group, and then I'm going to automate the on button right over here. So it'll be off the rest of the song and on the second verse. So say I want the filter to sound vintage. Now the cool thing with Ableton's new auto filter, I can actually change the sound of the filter by using an LFO. I can choose the type of wave that I want by selecting here. Let's go with something called Wonder and hear what that sounds like.
Secret conversations, I hear them whisper in the night.
I can play with the rate.
My brother's starting up a revolt. He's trying to get me on his side.
This is especially helpful for techno and experimental type instrumentals, but for this song, I'm going to keep it simple. Now I want to add a bass sub, and I'm going to be using one of my favorite features of Ableton, Meld. This version is so much cooler than the legacy version because you can add LFO, filters, oscillators, and so many cool things. I can change the amount of grit and grunge that I want in the sub by selecting harmonic FM and pulling up the amount. Can even play around with the ratio. The tone. I'm gonna go with sub. Sounds really cool. Let's track that in.
Papa's in the kitchen, cooking up a storm. Mama's crying in the bathroom. She wanna run away from home.
Okay guys, that's it for today's session. Thank you so much for tuning in. Obviously, I'm just scratching the surface when it comes to Ableton Live 12. And I just want to say a huge thank you again to Ableton for sponsoring this video. And I will check you guys out in the next one. Bye bye.